Today begins a 2.5-week period of which roster changes can be made in the CWL. Keeping one original player from the team that initially qualified is the only guarantee heading into this roster change period. Now, a few definites that we've seen up to this point: Bance, Zero, Scraps, all have announced that they are restricted free agents from Red Reserve and are looking to represent a team heading into the rest of the Pro League. Now, that's what I really want to hit on in this particular segment. I really want to touch on the fact that there have been rumors. There have been, some rumor speculation regarding buyouts. I want to specifically cover one, though, which is that, and this is confirmed, but that Scraps has only a $10,000 buyout in his contract. And he's made this clear on Twitter. And obviously, it's not by any means 100% official, but going off of his own words. Let me tell you something. If I am a GM right now, if I was a GM, I saw that tweet on my timeline, I would have never dialed a phone faster. The fact that his buyout is solely $10,000. To put it in perspective, there are many contracts that currently aren't even involved in the league that supersede that amount by 3, 4, 5, up to 10 times that. Even some in the Pro League that are 20 times that to a certain extent. Now, I'd imagine that this contract surely wasn't this low to start off. I have reported in the past that Red Reserve initially paid $80,000 to get Scraps initially to get him on the team back, maybe like a year ago, maybe even a few months ago in the past. Regardless, though, I think that this is the organization possibly having what's called a player safety clause, essentially, that does get put into contracts from time to time. And I'd imagine it says something along the lines of, hey, if we step over our bounds in a position that relates to your contract, we have the ability to drop your overall buyout by 80%, 70%, something along those lines. Not necessarily that, but something, like I said, that's similar to that. But along with the players announcing free agency, players have also gone out to say, from Red Reserve, that they haven't been getting paid. We've known in the past that there have been many issues with the Red Reserve organization in terms of ownership, and it sounds as if they kind of want to get out of esports completely, at least in regards to Call of Duty. Regardless, though, I think that if Red Reserve are currently struggling and they're thinking about possibly selling their spot, which seems to be a very highlighted topic right now going on in the Call of Duty community, from what I've heard, they are in the avenue of possibly selling, and I think two teams that I think will be interested in that are G2 and most primarily FaZe. Now, quickly before I go on, I want to target and say, throughout the last roster period, there were so many different opportunities in which FaZe were looking to get involved, even going with other organizations, being partnered with other organizations just to have their name in the league. So there is no surprise that there are rumors being shot out right now saying that, hey, FaZe is possibly looking at buying out Red Reserve spot, which will have lowered in comparison to the other roster change periods. We talk about the opportunities in which that orgs could sell has had, 1-2 different opportunities since the PLQ in which organizations had the ability to sell if they wanted to. Now we're sitting in the third one, and obviously that price is going to dip over time. Now, I could sit here and make speculation about, what FaZe roster is going to be. Is it going to be Scraps? Is Zero going to be thrown in there? But based on the way that roster changes work, especially in this esport, they change on the daily, and they are constantly going to be having players kind of thrown in there, be thrown out there. This isn't going to be an easy transition for either of these organizations to make, so I'd imagine it's going to take some time, especially if there are going to be contract buyouts in place. That's going to take some time in regards to how those are signed, how that kind of works out, which players are going to be left on the team, which players are going to be taken off, etc., etc. But what FaZe, what G2, what even CLG and TSM and other organizations have realized throughout this year is the opportunity that it is to be involved in the CWL this year. Now is the time that you can look to set up shop. Now is the time to build the infrastructure for franchising next year. And I know I've made a ton of videos talking about franchising, talking about the importance of getting in now. And this is a perfect implication of that as of this moment. You see how hard FaZe is wanting to get in the league, and obviously there are a ton of different reasons as to why that is. But one debate that I've had in the past, one thing that I primarily bring up a lot of the time, is the price. The price change coming into next year. And I've heard a lot of people come at me and say, prices aren't going to raise for Call of Duty Esports next year. They're already inflated. There's no way that they are going to raise. Well, quickly kind of surveying back, in League of Legends, another franchise esport, the average player's salary heading into franchising, so first year franchising into the next year, it increased by 118% in just a year's time. And now I agree with the fact that, possibly when we discuss and when we talk about how the Call of Duty Esports, contracts, how they're inflated, how they could be have a little bit more than usual, when all of that money starts to come in, when all of those sponsorships start to come in, players are going to receive that benefit as well. Staff is going to receive that benefit when these organizations, when in terms of their overall growth starts to go up, players have to be compensated in that way as well. So the reason why I've been saying get ahead of the curve, the reason why I've been saying get in now, if you actually have a legitimate shot of being involved in franchising next year, this is the way that you do it, because contracts next year are going to only become more valuable. Contracts of players, staff, etc. Everything will go up, even in regards to future player trades. Many players and teams don't realize how important the next year is. Making sure you're with a stable organization as a player is important. Making sure as an organization you have a talented enough roster to hold you down for years to come. There are so many factors that teams need to be prepared for, and I think a lot of them, not that necessarily the teams that we have in the league aren't aware of this, but there are a lot of players more specifically who aren't really kind of aware of what's going to happen next season. Making sure you're on a stable org who can be involved in the league next year. If they're not 100% guaranteed, then there's a chance that you may not be in the league. There's a chance that you may get traded to a team that you don't want to be traded to. There's a chance that you may, like I said, in the first place, not be in the league whatsoever due to contract requirements or due to trades, however those things will go on. Now, with that being said, I believe that this roster change period will be one of the most important in Call of Duty history, because there is going to be a long, drawn-out period in which managers and players have to think about who is available. When you have time on your hands, what do? You start to overthink things. You start thinking, hey, can my team really, do I have enough players on my team that can sell sponsorships for franchising next year? That's going to be one of the main topics that especially younger organizations or even teams who maybe are on the lesser of the talent side of things start to think about first. That's the reason why we see initially UYU come out there and say, hey, we want methods. Not only is he a good player, but he's going to sell stuff, right? He's a face. He's a brand. He was just on Optic Gaming. He was just on FaZe Clan. He's been in the Pro League for who knows how long, right? In regards to his overall career, he has a fan base. So there's a lot of things that companies and rather that organizations are going to be looking out for in terms of next year. Now, if Red Reserve spot is sold, let's say either FaZe or G2 wants to grab it, well, both orgs, right? They already have at least one player. So there's going to be someone who goes on the market. Regardless of what happens with Red, regardless of what happens with FaZe, G2, there are going to be players who are out there. There's going to be opportunities that are out there. Now, depending on how that FaZe and possible Red Reserve change goes, we could possibly see a quick little player swap, and maybe there might be like one player available that could allow for a short change trade. Regardless, though, teams like Midnight, LG, UYU, Reciprocity, EG, Splice, Envy, Accelerate are all teams that I think we could possibly see change up a little bit, at least start to think about making changes. And like I said, we're going to have a 2.5 week period. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of talk going about. There's going to be a lot of organizations who are watching players start to whiz by. We're going to see a lot of situations where players are watching and saying, hey, maybe we're not as solid as we thought we were, right? Look at that roster. Look at this team. They look a lot better than they did just a few days ago. Maybe we should start thinking about making a trade. And as soon as that thought enters the mind, as soon as that thought turns into an action, that is when we start to see a lot of changes be made. And I know there's a lot of talk going out there. Do we even think that Optic Gaming will change? Is that even a possibility? I really don't think that will be the case, but I think they would be dumb to not at least consider one. And I say, whenever I say that, I think every team, depending on the type of players who are out there, we're talking about Scraps, right? Scraps probably, in a lot of people's opinion, a top 5, if not top 10, top 7, however you want to label it, a top player in the game, without question, has as small of a buyout as that. I think as an organization, I would buy him and then sell him myself at that point. So I think that every team, regardless of the prestige that they have, regardless of the names that you might have on your team, it's important to make sure heading into franchising next year that you have a stable roster that can last the long haul, that can last for a while heading into next year. Or if not, at least acquiring valuable pieces that you can sell along the way to make sure that you're clear, to make sure that you're good. But I think it would be silly for teams to automatically just go out there and say, absolutely not. We are not in any way, shape, or form even thinking about making a change when, like I said, this is probably going to be your last opportunity. Put it in consideration. If players are floating around, like I said, for example, Scraps' 10K buyout would be a drop in the bucket next season. You will 100% make some money if you pick up Scraps right now and trade him heading into next year. There's a lot of things for players and teams to be thinking about. Like I said, these options will only continue to last. And now could be the last major organization's chance that they have until everything starts to skyrocket heading into franchising. This roster mania will be the last major one we have until everything changes next season. We talk about everything that's happened in Call of Duty history in regards to even the early changes. Go back to Black Ops 2, to Ghost, Advanced Warfare, how crazy those were. All of those will solely be a distant memory after this one is over. We will see who comes out on top, because this period will change the landscape at which Call of Duty Esports acts currently and the way contracts, players, etc. are dealt with for years to come.